glad to see, especially since I got a automatic reply from his email address, is Representative Ron Noble. And this man has had a busy last couple of days. I want to point this out. We don't even know how busy Representative Noble is, but we're glad to have him here. So,
we got a full report, Ron.
Do you even have the mental space to be able to tell us what happened in your life in the past week?
It has been a pretty quick whirlwind. Yesterday was an experience from a number of. We passed some legislation. Obviously, the thing in the news is the protest that unfortunately resembled a lot of what some positive protests in Portland that ended up taking a bad turn, and that's what happened yesterday in Salem. And I can't, and I don't think anybody here would condone the violence and criminal activity. The unique part here, well, I don't know if it's unique, but at least the first I heard is the protesters actually having pepper spray and spraying, or trying to attempt to spray the state troopers inside the Capitol, and then having best described as kind of a makeshift. Someone tried, I don't know if it was just a poorly made or poor grade of smoke canister, but it was a very poor. Let's say it didn't deploy well. It fortunately didn't, because it was in the Capitol. The fire alarms all went off in the Capitol. There was no fire, but we did start to evacuate, and then they determined it was not a fire situation, so they asked us not to evacuate, to stay inside and not put ourselves out with the protesters. So it was an interesting day. We still were able to get work done. My hat's off to the state troopers and the Salem police officers who I think they were in a pretty tough situation in trying to appropriately, without going overboard, yet still having to still react appropriately to the people who were had crossed that line between protest and violence. Mm-hmm. And I have to say, it's like any other group. It's not the whole group. There are a few individuals that take it upon themselves, when I think the majority of people there were protesting really access to the Capitol. And the nexus there to the legislatures, we started off with a fairly lengthy debate on the floor of the House, and I think the Senate did too, on just how we continue on to be the people's representative when the people are locked out. And that's what the protest was. There was, like I said, in the House, lengthy debate on how we do that, and really the idea of trying to ensure public access and still keep a safe environment. So that was the topic, at least starting out. We did, like I said, we passed some legislation. We authorized $200 million for landlord-tenant issues, and $150 million to help at least provide some relief to landlords, and another $50 million for tenants. But one of the things that I think is important is, now moving forward, tenants actually have to document and certify that they're impacted by COVID, as opposed to just not paying. And I know that most of the calls I've received over the last several months have been landlords describing stories of their tenants who are still working, and someone, a couple of them bought new cars, and they're just not, they decided not to pay rent. So hopefully those are just a few people that no longer will be able to not pay their rent, and truly focus on people who have been impacted by COVID. So those are some things. There's some legislation deal with schools and providing some liability relief for schools. It'll be interesting to see how that impacts the schools, because the danger of COVID doesn't change just because we decided that they won't be liable. So that's a real health issue. It doesn't change that dynamic, but I know that there are a lot of people hoping that kids can get back into school soon. And then some business-related legislation that talks about providing more access for restaurants and being able to sell, and hopefully provide a little bit of relief to them. and I know that we've done a lot more. There was another 600 million assigned or delegated to the emergency board for wildfire relief, COVID relief, and then some discretionary funds of 100 million for the e-board. So that'll be money that'll be available right away. There's a lot of questions as to why we did it now and not wait till the 2021 session. And part of that is because when we pass a bill in 2021, it doesn't become effective until after the governor signs it, and that could be next June. And then to actually get the money into the hands of the people who need it. So this will allow some flexibility early on with it still trying to address COVID and wildfire recovery. That's busy, and I know I didn't get it all. My mind's still, I had a committee meeting this morning even, so, and I hope that all came across. My internet connection's satellite, so it's a little bit scratchy.
And I apologize, I think my screen froze up, so we'll work with what we have. Thank you. Thank you, Representative Noble, for a lot of work and for speaking, I think, in a very careful manner that's non-inflammatory around the protests as well. I was following it very closely, and I also thought that the Oregon State Patrol and the Salem Police Department did a very restrained job. So along the lines of I was going to say the legislation itself, Joya, what would you like to ask? And welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Representative Noble. I know it was fast and furious, I'm sure, yesterday. So I have a question. Now the federal government has issued all this money, but there isn't any money coming to states other than going into healthcare and things like that. How is that going to impact the state of Oregon? Thank you. Or do you know?
Are you talking about the most recent package?
The 900 billion?
You know, unfortunately, I've been so involved in getting my legislative drafts in, which were all due yesterday, and focused on the short session. I know that the federal government has a package, and I hope to be able to go into depth over the next couple of days. But I've been, as Commissioner Close said, I've been absolutely focused on what we've been dealing with over the Capitol the last few days. I have not studied what the package involves.
Not a worry. Thank you for that. I have another question. So have we heard anything from the governor about opening gyms and restaurants? I know you can buy alcohol now, but our gyms are suffering, they're all suffering. So any news, particularly since the data that I'm seeing is not saying that gyms are places of where the virus is really being sort of spread widely, and that it's more, small gatherings of family members and things like that. So any news on that? Thank you.
I haven't heard anything specific from the governor's office. I had some opportunities for some discussion with my colleagues at the Capitol. I have a colleague that actually is a restaurant owner, and they installed hospital-grade HEPA filters in their restaurant. And so I think where we're getting pushed, and I can't disagree with this, instead of industry specific, that it's individual specific, because there are some restaurants who have taken, and same with gyms, and have taken this seriously and have put everything in place that we would have in a hospital or other facility. And then there are others who haven't. So I don't know what type of a resource, a personnel resource it would take to do something like that. But instead of industry specific, I would like to see it start to move into just specific locations based on people's ability to comply and provide a safe environment. Excuse me.
Thank you. Thank you. I think our businesses would really appreciate that because they know what they need to do. And it would be nice if they could continue doing the work and getting people employed, because there are people that are out of work because all of these businesses are closed. Some of them are continuing to be paid, but other places just can't afford to do it. So thank you. I appreciate that.
I expect this to continue for a while, even after the vaccinations, because it's going to take quite a while for that to occur. But we know that there are some restaurants that are very where it would be facilities that would be easier to comply than others. And I think if people are willing to do that and provide a safe environment, that we should consider that. Again, I don't know what type of a personnel, manpower, resource that would take to ensure community safety, but it would make sense that we would start to transition away from industry-wide or industry-specific guidelines to more localized. I'm not speaking on behalf of anybody else. Just so you know, this is not something I've heard from the governor. This is not something I've heard from colleagues and leadership. This is just Ron Noble's idea of where I hope we can go to allow people to transition into safe lives and living, or safety, and being able to get the communities in economics, start some economic recovery.
Well, from your lips to the governor's ears, I would thank you. I appreciate that. And if there's anything at the chamber that we can do to support you and support that, please let me know. Thank you.
I will.
Thank you, Joya. And then I think that Abisha has a question for you too.
Good morning, everybody. Happy holiday week. Thank you, Representative Noble, for the update. And I just wanted to add in to help support response to Joya's question. I was able to watch a part of the governor's press availability today, and that question specifically around gyms was asked. And the response was, I'll allow you to watch it to get the full response, but something to the effect of, we're still following science, right, on that data. And gyms are one of those targeted areas. So Representative Noble, kind of going into this future work, I want to express support for your opinion, for Ron Noble's opinion, about potential approaches to industries that are being specifically targeted as industries of concern. From our manufacturers and our industry partners, they are all very familiar with the practice of continuous improvement. And the majority of our state regulatory agencies work with those business partners to identify solutions to potential issues. So it is the historical approach of agency partners to say, here are the concerns that we have, and then ask industry to find a solution to address those concerns, not the other way around. And so I would urge the state to take that very tried and true approach to partner with those industries of concern and allow them to find solutions to the concerns that are identified. So I would be happy to share additional thoughts on that in the future, and or provide partners to sit at the table to discuss those solutions. But I really appreciate and respect that approach, and hope that, especially if we find ourselves in a long-term recovery process, that we take that approach. Thank you for listening to my thoughts.
No, I appreciate that, and I don't say it without any thought that we careful in how we transition. My wife and I often make comments to each other about now that we have older kids and grandkids, and I've had employees. It's not a common thing for someone to say, "Hey, if you would just treat me like an adult," and then you treat them like an adult, but they fail to act like an adult. So sometimes we need to make that transition carefully so that people don't just decide that they no longer need to be cognizant of the health issues and health risks.
It's an interesting thought. I really appreciate that. And for the record, I refer to Representative Noble as Representative Noble because I have a lot of respect for him, but he does seem like Ron to me, so apologies to all of you. But Representative Noble, it seems like what we've seen in the previous two waves, which are considerably smaller in Oregon at least, is that there's an initial tightening up and then a loosening as you see case counts go down. I'm assuming that the risk-based approach that the governor's office has set up with OHA of different categories is kind of reflecting that. I just wonder whether there's another level to it so that statewide different things change as case counts go down. But maybe we should all just want to have the county by county. I don't know.
I don't know. I think Abisha made a great comment that manufacturing does it well. As we learn more, things will change, and the dynamics will change. I just don't. I have this idea where I think it would be going, but I really don't know because I don't have the information right in front of me, and and we have some very smart people that are looking at it. And I think it's healthy that we have a tension that between the economic impacts and the health impacts, and people on both sides, smart people on both sides of that argument. And hopefully we are hitting that sweet spot. Not that everybody's happy, but you know, I like that we have some tension to try and keep both sides and keep their feet to the fire, so we're doing the right thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to bring in, thank you, Representative Noble. I want to bring in outgoing State Senator Arnie Roblan. Representative Noble gave us a brief overview of everything that happened in the last day or two. Is there anything, Senator, that you want to add to that?
I didn't get to hear all of it. I just got in from Salem, actually. I was up there for a day and a half and drove back today. Not a lot. If he talked about the session, he probably got all that right. I did appreciate his conversation that just got over, which I didn't get to listen to. And would say that I have encouraged that at different times with the governor's office. In fact, that is exactly how we got the Dolphin School open. It took longer than I thought it should, but it was really a conversation with Dolphin and said, here's how we know we can take care of it. We didn't have any problems last year. I think that they would listen to us. And then I got a hold of the governor's office and the medical people, and it took an extra week or so than I thought it should. But eventually they saw the light and recognized that the procedures in place would work, and we haven't had any outbreak there. So I'm assuming that it is working. So I think listening to the people and giving them a chance would be helpful. It might relieve a little bit of the tension that's going on around the state. As you saw, there were a few people that showed up at the Capitol outside who don't seem to be happy with anything. I was happy that they were all not sick, so that was good. Theoretically, they weren't. We'll find out how they are eventually, but their behavior was not helpful for any of the things that are going on. And I actually... you know, the governor set up this process with a bunch of doctors and scientists, and she does listen to them. And they tend to be, in general, pretty conservative with respect to making sure people are well. As you know, we passed a bill on liability for schools with the understanding that hopefully we can get people back in the buildings. And there are no liability insurance coverage out there for any school, including private schools right now. They gave it up with respect to pandemic kinds of issues. I am pretty certain that's true of almost all of the businesses that are out there. And as you know, part of the reason that we didn't get more in this latest round of talks at the federal level was that there was a big push for liability for all these companies that the Senate president wanted, and they would not give. So it is a big issue, and as you watched, 4 of our members, there were a group of Democrats who voted against the school liability issue because they're very concerned that you're taking away rights of individual people to get action, especially around people with disabilities who have a greater risk of other kinds of things. And so they were very concerned about that and made that clear in the vote that took place. I think, as you saw, the majority in both the House and the Senate believed that we needed to do something since all of the insurance companies, and PACE is the big one for education, had withdrawn any coverage at all. But again, it goes back to they have to be following the latest information in order to protect themselves. I think that's important. That's harder for each of these individual companies because I don't know that there's the latest information to make sure that your gyms are safe and other kinds of stuff. But I would be very concerned about companies opening up without some kind of liability. It may be expensive right now for companies when they can't open up and they can't sell, restaurants and so on. But it only takes one really bad case in court to make that seem like it wasn't that expensive. So we have to be careful as we move forward to make sure people have the ability to stay safe and be comfortable, and also for those businesses to be able to weather whatever storms may come. So I am concerned. We just had another outbreak in Coos Bay in one of our elderly facilities, and so we're getting rather nervous trying to figure out how to take care of that. So it is still out there, pretty rampant. And most of the counties on the coast now have been moved up to the severe range. So we aren't going in quite the right direction yet. But I agree, we have to try to figure out how to balance the needs of an economy with the needs of people. And I think we did the right thing by coming in to the Capitol and having the short session, getting the $800 million into the e-board so that we can actually do some of that stuff, especially around the fires and around pandemic, was really, really important. And for the rental relief, it looks like there's going to be a lot more rental relief coming from the federal program. That's a good thing. And I think it was designed in a way that allows us to make sure we don't fall over ourselves and do the wrong thing, so we lose some of that money. So I think we will be able to get, and I wouldn't say solve the problem, start working on the problem of what happens when this is over with all these people that owe enormous amounts of back rent and other kinds of things. So I hope we continue to work on that, and the next session, the Ron Nobles of the world that have to carry on after I'm gone. So it was a good short session. I would have voted for the medical liability that didn't make it through, for the hospitals and the others, because I think that's important. The positive thing is there haven't been many lawsuits out there from anybody with regard to that. So we'll hope that holds, that they don't have any what I would call frivolous lawsuits. But I think there was a way, and I know that Brzezinski and the other people who were working on that felt that they had something, but couldn't quite get it across the finish line for that one. The other things that we did, I think, were important, but we'll have to wait and see how all of that pans out. And then I anticipate I will have a couple more meetings of the e-board between now and the 10th of January. And I think that question, some people said, why don't we just wait till the session? Well, the e-board, this is money that was in this budget, this year's budget, so it can be spent now. And when the new session comes, it's a little harder to get to that as quickly as it is for the e-board to get to it before that session starts and actually put the money in places where it can actually be used. And I anticipate if we get information quickly on the federal program and that money starts coming out, they will need the e-board to actually give the different agencies the ability to spend that money. So I think there's some things between now and January you need to watch for to see how quickly that money can get out. When you're in regular session, things take longer to get through the two sides and to get out to people. So I believe that using the e-board and getting it set up with this money is going to be helpful for the beginning, at least through the end of the actual year when the budget stuff mostly happens for this next session. And people don't realize that really the session is about starting July 1 and going forward. Most of the bills don't take effect until 90 days after we get out of session. So getting that stuff done ahead of time to give them the breathing room to actually do the stuff right is going to be important. And I think there'll be a lot of conversations about both the school liability, the rental stuff in that first of the session, to include how do we make up for that 20%? Because I for one, felt that didn't work well for me, that a landlord would have to give up 20% in order to take advantage of it. So I hope we can have things, and I know that Senator Manning and some others talked very clearly about the fact that they had a hard time with some of that as well. So we'll see how that goes as the session starts, but we can get it going for now. And it was a fun time.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It was a fun time. I'm glad you got one last session in.
Exactly. Exciting.
Are there questions for Senator Roblan? So Senator Roblan, there's money coming from the federal government for vaccines and rental assistance.
I think
and I'm kind of blanking on the rest of them that'll come to the state.
Yeah, PPP and some other kinds of stuff. They didn't give any local government money, and they didn't give any direct to the state money. That whole thing that was held up about the liability issue that the Senate President had. But the other stuff is going to be coming, and generally it's distributed the way it's distributed. Now, PPP came through a little differently, and I'm not sure how that's going to happen. But for most of the rental relief stuff, it came to the state. The state sent it out to community action programs and others to distribute it. So I would anticipate that same process. I hope we don't invent another one, because that always takes a whole lot longer. That was the biggest problem that a lot of people had with the rental relief. That's a whole new program we're setting up for the people, not the rental part, but for the direct access to the rental owners, the property people. And that'll take a month or so to
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. Well, I know that the Yamhill Community Action Partnership has made very good use of the rental assistance dollars from the first, the CARES Act. So they're very glad to be getting more. And I shouldn't be speaking for them when there's a board member on just beside us here. But okay, are there any other questions for Senator Roblan? I mean, there's lots of questions, but specifically about this.
Yeah.
Okay, great. And I actually wanted to I was going to ask Abisha and Joya specifically, what more do you understand? Al is not able to join us today on behalf of Congresswoman Bonamici, because they're working on sifting through the 5,600 pages of details of the bill and getting out explanations to constituents. But what do the two of you know about the PPP and how business eligibility going forward?
Abisha, do you want to take it, or do you want me to do it?
Joya just sent out an update to her business partners. So Joya, go ahead and start, and then if there's anything need to be added, I'll jump in.
Awesome, thank you. So the whole package was $900 billion, 5,500 plus pages, longest bill ever, longest bill since 1986, I want to say. I read that somewhere. It is the additional PPP will terminate March 31st. So businesses that would like to do a second dip into PPP or never got PPP, for example, chambers of commerce can now apply for PPP and other businesses like that. It expands the allowable uses, so you could only use it for certain things. It's expanding that a bit. And it's also simplifying the loan process, particularly for loans under $150,000. Second loans would be limited to those with fewer than 300 employees, and you must have a drop of at least 25%, of your revenue during the first, second, or third quarter of 2020. And it also reduces the amount. Remember, you could get 10 million, you can only get 2 million now. The other thing, that's just the PPP. I mean, there's a whole bunch of other things that are included. Do you want me to keep going? Okay. There are employers that were deferring workers' payroll taxes, and under Trump administration, that was something that he signed into an executive order. They now have until the end of 2021 to pay it back, so they can take some time to pay back those back taxes on withholding for employees. $12 billion has been set aside for minority-owned businesses, so those businesses that are minority-owned should really be ready to apply, because we expect the money is going to go rather quickly. So with regard to PPP, talk to your bank. And then if there are any other loans, those would come through the SBA. You have until, also nonprofits, local newspapers, TV and radio broadcasters, like community radio was excluded in the past. They should be able to apply now. The bill created $15 billion in grant program for live venues, so theaters, museums, like, for example, our museum here, the two museums we have here in town, they had to have lost 25% of revenues. The good news for people who are on jobless unemployment would get $300 per week for the next 11 weeks. So it starts the beginning of December and it goes through March 14th. So yes, it's only 11 weeks. However, it's 11 weeks. So that was good news for a lot of people who were looking at not getting anything moving forward. Also, they extended two other unemployment programs, Pandemic Unemployment Assistance Program and the Pandemic Emergency Unemployment Compensation Program. Lots of words. Both programs would close to new applicants on March 14th, so people have time to get through, and those benefits would continue through April 5th. Everyone who is registered in the country, if you got a stimulus package before, you likely will get another one depending upon how much money you make. So $600 direct stimulus payment to most Americans, and payments start phasing out for individuals. So this is one person that makes 75,000, and those making more than 99,000 would get nothing. They would double that for the threshold for couples. So a couple making 150,000 would get $1,200. There are also new rounds of funding for subsidies for hard-hit businesses and restaurants. So gyms and restaurants in Oregon would probably fall under that. I mentioned in the chat the $82 billion for schools and colleges, $27 billion for transportation. So that would be good. Maybe there'll be money for the Newburgh-Dundee bypass. Just throwing that idea out. And $22 billion for health-related expenses of state, local, tribal, and government. Territorial government. So that would be, I think, where the state would be getting some of those funds to help with the expenses that the state have had. It does extend the moratorium on evictions to January 31st, 2021, and $25 billion in rental assistance for individuals who lost their sources of income during the pandemic. And yes, I mentioned the bill was over 5,000 pages. So that's the business side of it, the things that would, the highlights of that 5,500. That's my 2 cents. I don't know about you, Abisha. What else you have that you did?
It was a phenomenal start to it, Abisha.
Right. That's why I wanted to go after Joya. I saw what she sent out to the business partners and thought, this gal has it summarized. The only other thing, you may have actually said this and I just missed it, is that 501c6 organizations are eligible for the PPP program in this round, which is really exciting because, again, that's our business support sort of organizations such as chambers of commerce. Of course, there are some rules around that. They need to not be contributing more than a certain amount of gross receipts for lobbying activities and whatnot. The only other thing I wanted to add is that we do have this emergency capital investment program through the Treasury, and we will probably see those funds come through our Community Development Finance Institution, or CDFIs. And there's other funding that's also coming through the CDFIs, which is good for our region in terms of these sort of community development projects, and also our business partners often will work with CDFIs in utilizing funds to do good things in the community. So that's just I'm not 100% sure how those funds will be used in regards to capital investment. They really are talking about low-term, low-cost capital investment for institutions who have a plan to significantly increase lending or investment activity in LMI minority communities. So the intent is to really support our rural and maybe our communities of greatest need. So that was the only other thing I wanted to add. Thanks, Joya. Great summary.
Oh, thanks, Abisha. One more thing. Somewhere I read that it also extended the deadline for CARES Act funding to have been spent. And so I don't know how that impacts the county and the state and any CARES Act money that was received, because it does push the date out, I think, to the end of January, but I could be wrong about that. So I just throw that out as one other thing, that we have a little bit more time to spend money because it was such a close deadline. And yeah.
I just want to share with folks that is correct. That language is in there. However, until the bill is signed by the president, right, we don't have authority to assume that is going to be approved. And so the county and most of our local jurisdictions are still working against that December 31st deadline because we don't have a fully executed bill.
That's a really good point. We have at least one contract with an internet provider that we need to get finalized, just in case. But I know that, and Senator Roblan and Representative Noble can clarify, I know that the state has been scrambling to make sure that any funds that are sitting here that aren't going to be used get moved over to here to get used where they know they're going to be used by the end of the year, which I think was part of that $55 million that went out to business support. Senator Roblan, Representative Noble, do you know about the kind of the balance of funds at the state for CRF?
We've been asking for that from the in the e-board. We have not gotten a number that I have heard of anyway, so I don't know the answer to that.
Okay. I do know that there was an article in the Oregonian about the city of Portland and Multnomah County and their balance and how much was going to be spent. But yeah. the county, Yamhill County, we had 3.6 million that was essentially set aside for us at the state, and we will be very close to using all of that reimbursable outside groups. With a lot of thanks to Abisha. All right, any other questions for Abisha and Joya? All right, great. Sorry,
we missed something that you
bad
said
internet.
there.
We still need good internet. That's all I can say. Thank you for those updates. I do also know that we have a historic amount of investment in low carbon energy generation in the bill as well. Okay, Kelly Mankey, Councilor Mankey from the city of McMinnville, what would you like to share with people today?
I don't really have a lot to share. We're kind of in a breathing moment in the city. One thing I can tell you is they're going to start talking about more options for the fire districting. Evidently, everybody's in and excited about it. I think we'll probably start seeing some proposals within about 6 weeks from the beginning of the year, and we'll also start doing some polling too, so we'll have some idea how the public feels about some of this stuff.
Very good. Well, thank you.
That's all.
That sounds great. And I'm going to give Superintendent Sug a heads up that I'm going to call on him in a moment to let us know how his school district is doing. But it sometimes takes a little while to turn on your video and unmute yourself. Oh, we've got him. I thought maybe I'd have to keep going. Superintendent, how are things in the Dayton School District since I haven't received the newsletter in a few days? And what would you like to share with the people of Yamhill County about school district in general?
Well, I'm interested in, the federal legislation, I think, has some money for schools, and I'm interested to see how that comes out. I have no idea. I haven't been following that closely at all. We're planning to, we're excited about January. Right now, of course, we're on winter break, but we are excited about perhaps getting, some more students doing the limited in-person instruction in January, and hopeful about the vaccines and maybe bringing, kind of reducing the pandemic in the future. And we're also, trying to work with the health department to decide when and where teachers will fit into the vaccine protocol there, and where our priority is. But I'd like to thank, Representative Noble and Senator Roblan for their service, and once a pirate, always a pirate, right, Mr. Roblan? He was a vice principal when I was in high school at Marshfield there, so.
Everybody apparently was a student of Senator Roblan's. Well, that's great, Superintendent. I was actually going to ask because I was watching the press conference and it wasn't clear where teachers and school district workers were fitting into it, but it sounds like they're considered maybe higher up on a priority list now.
Yeah, my understanding is that, they started with group 1A and teachers, school district personnel would be in that group 1B.
And as Pat Allen said in answer to, well, when will that be? He said, I don't know.
It's like everything else in 2020.
At least he was honest about all of that. I don't know. Okay, well, thank you for joining us, and thank you for leading your school district. I hope in the new year we can get a lot more students back into classes. So
that's what we hope.
And it sure seems like between what the legislature, the work of the legislature, and the funding from the federal government, and the 1B status, that's a lot of there are lots of different movements towards getting students back into classes in a way that's safe for everybody.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. I appreciate that it's a priority of the governor and of everybody to get students back in school safely as soon as we can.
Yeah, and I did note that Pat Allen talked about how it appeared that the 2-week freeze that was really quite devastating, as Joya mentioned, to a number of businesses, does seem to be reducing the overall case counts. And that's very, very hopeful to me. It felt kind of out of control when our county was seeing going from 10 cases a day being a lot to being like 54 cases a day, 2 people from our community dying rather than nobody. So this is very, very encouraging to me. We've gotten to everybody today. We didn't leave Superintendent Sugg out on this one. Hooray. Are there any last thoughts? And I should mention, I forgot to, I was going to prompt Abisha on this one, but the county just this morning did approve 144 $10,000 grants to businesses that have been impacted by the either total closure because of the freeze or significant business curtailment because of the freeze. So thank you. Do you want to speak to that at all? Kind of the overall, the summary of how you did it, Abisha?
Sure, if we have a little bit more time. So as kind of speaking to this group and anybody who might be listening, Yamhill County was allocated just under $1.44 million out of this governor's relief package that just came out last month in an attempt to reach our businesses that had been impacted by the Executive Order 2065. So our Yamhill County Board of Commissioners decided to take the approach to take a tiered approach to awarding these grants. So they focused mostly on businesses who had been impacted by the order from 2065 for full closure. So that was gyms, event centers, aquatic centers, museums, businesses that could not have their doors open or do business in any real capacity. Also knowing that those businesses had been impacted by previous executive orders as well. So that was our tier 1 priority. Tier 2 priority were our businesses in hospitality, restaurants, our wineries, businesses that had been otherwise impacted as well, right? Pretty impactfully affected by these various executive orders. And then tier 3 was all of the other for-profit businesses and nonprofit businesses who had been adversely impacted as well. So we were able to make a recommendation for 144 awards, as Commissioner Kula mentioned, at $10,000 each. And those businesses who applied, whether they were awarded or not, will be contacted between today and tomorrow. The county, as I mentioned before, because we don't have the ability to assume that there will be an extension of this timeline into January, we're still moving against the December 31st timeline, which also meets our contractual obligation with the state to have contracts in place with those award recipients so that we can issue those funds. So anybody who receives that email saying you've been approved for an award, please respond to the county as quickly as you can to get those contracts finalized. I also have a few more updates real quick, Commissioner Kula, if that's okay to share. As you see here, SEDCOR had our 2020 annual awards, and I shared with some who were on the call early that it took me a long time to figure out how to get this virtual background on here, which means it'll take me a while to figure out how to get it off. But I get to advertise that we did share, in this year, there has been a lot of struggle. There's also been a lot of great things that have been going on. And we had a couple of award recipients out of Yamhill County that I wanted to share who they are and what they're doing. We awarded Solid Form Fabrication the Community Service Award this year. And the reason we did that is because, thank you, yes, great company. They do a lot for our community. They have an employee volunteer program, and their employees volunteered many hours, hundreds of hours through Habitat for Humanity. In addition, one of the most exciting projects is that they started a collaboration fundraising event with winery partners to create a wine called Rising Together. It's a brand that they started. Again, this is a collaborative wine project. And through the the proceeds of the sales of this wine, they fund a youth workforce program that is focused in Yamhill County, engaging youth, training them on, traded sector and trade skills. And it's an amazing project, and it's done entirely to benefit the youth and workforce development in our community. So we're so grateful for them. We also awarded Hampton Lumber the Outstanding Public-Private Partnership. So some of you might be aware of the long-term ties that Hampton Lumber has to the city of Willamina, but what you might not know is how generous they have been in that community. So Hampton, and this was several years ago, donated 23 acres of land to the city of Willamina to create the Huddleston Pond at Hampton Park. Since then, that company and their employees have created a fishing dock. They have built an accessibility walkway to the fishing park. They built a wellness equipment. They maintain the walking trails. They installed a solar aerator in the pond. And they are currently working on building a BMX track for the youth in Willamina. And so we're so grateful to have them as a partner. And moving on from that, just a couple more points of note. I wanted to make sure folks are aware that the Yamhill County Community Care Organization, YCCO, is issuing a grant program in January focused on childcare and school-aged kids' needs for distance learning. I urge any of our industry partners who are looking to develop a workforce childcare program to reach out to me directly so that I can support the development of that initiative and also get them hooked into resources in order to do that. I also wanted to share that we have a wonderful business partner in the city of Newburgh, who's a large landowner who is doing some redevelopment work, who has offered to donate 7 houses to wildfire recovery. So areas that were impacted by the wildfire, if people are looking for homes, I have reached out to all of our regional solutions partners through Jody Christensen to see if we have any interest in those homes and taking advantage of this donation. But the reason I share that is I just want to highlight that, and as much as we have experienced some difficulty throughout this year, we also have amazing people doing amazing things. And I look at the screen today, and I know we're missing a lot of folks, but the people on screen today are no exception to that. So thank you all for the work that you do. And Senator Roblan, I am not 100% sure. In your transition, are you retiring?
I am.
Oh my gosh.
Though I will take on a few little things. I'm filling out an application to be on the board of directors for Oregon State University, and I'm on the Grand Ron Foundation, so I'm helping give out money from the Grand Ron. So I will stay on a few things.
And I love that you said that, because I always say that people who are active in our community are terrible at retiring because they stay so busy in retirement. But I do ask that you take good care of retirement so that it's there when I get there, because I hope one day to get there myself. Thank you.
That's awesome. Thank you. From me, Senator Roblan, thank you for joining us for this last one of 2020. It's been such a pleasure and a treasure to have you joining us to provide. It's, as you know, people can say words like, here, this is what's happening, but to have your depth of experience behind it and your kindness along the way is, we all so appreciate it. I'm going to just speak for everybody else.
I will say it's been really a pleasure to get to know all the people on these calls, and it gives me a whole nother appreciation for Yamhill County. You are one of the few that's been consistently doing this, and the people who are on the screen today, as well as the others, have been really insightful about how you've been approaching all of this stuff, and I really do appreciate that. So thank you, and thanks for the opportunity to be a part of it.
It's truly our pleasure.
And it's always great to have ex-students available.
Seriously, what an awesome thing. Okay, and Representative Noble apologizes. He lost his internet connection. So, damn it, can we do something about that?
I have really good internet connections, and I'm all the way down in Coos Bay. I don't know what you're doing.
I don't know. We're working on it. Is what we're doing. We're working on it. In fact, we're waiting to sign a big one, right, to expand the physical internet infrastructure for Online Northwest. So
actually, having been on the Rural Broadband Committee for like 6 years, it's been very frustrating that I couldn't get anybody's attention about it until recently. But now everybody seems to think that they've always been wanting to do this. They just hadn't been putting any money to it. I mean, we lost millions of dollars from the federal government that they do like a 90% match with schools for putting in internet all over the state. And we didn't come up with the minuscule 10% to get the money the previous two sessions, even though we tried. It's very, very frustrating. Now they can't wait to give us money to do that. So that's a positive. So I anticipate over the next 4 or 5 years, we will improve it around the state. So thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. And my internet cut out in the middle of that, so I only heard part of it, but amen. Okay, before I lose my internet altogether, are there any last thoughts?
I just had 2 things I wanted to
All right, vaccines are on their way.
Yes. OHA has a page with vaccine information. So if anybody's interested, just go to the OHA website. And the other thing is the Oregon Department of Employment is seeking feedback from business community on paid family and medical leave insurance. So if anyone has any questions on that, please get in touch with me. I'm happy to, president@mcminnville.org, happy to answer any questions. Thank you. That's all. Senator Roblan, I wish you all the best. Enjoy your retirement. You deserve it. You've done a great job for our community and for our state, and we will miss seeing you here on our calls. But I think I'm going to speak for Casey. Come on back and visit us anytime. We'd love to see you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Definitely. And Joya, you prompted my my memory that the Oregon Employment Department is actually working on a presentation for the WorkShare program. Oh, well, okay. Thank you, everybody. Be safe out there. Have a great Christmas.
Bye. Merry Christmas, everyone. Happy holidays. Stay well. Stay safe.
Yes.
Thank you.
All of you out there.